In my previous video, I built this manual air controller for the air ride system on my Hudson Rat Truck build. Now it's time to look at the next component, which will be an air tank. Let's get into that. Hey, how's it, jokes, and welcome back to the shop. If you don't know me, my name is Duff, all the way from a small farm near a smallish town called Mossel Bay in South Africa, right at the bottom end of the African continent. I need an air tank, so of course I can just go and press a button on a computer and get myself a nice shiny new one. But that's not my style, and some of you who've been visiting here quite often will know I'm actually quite a stingy old fart. Besides, I do believe rat rods is about reclaiming and using parts from the junkyard. So let's see what we can come up with to build our own air tank. I paid a visit to my favorite parts store, the junkyard, and I found this 25-liter compressor tank. So for my mates in the States, I think there's a little bit less than 4 liters to the gallon. So this would be roughly 6 times 4, 24 liters, a little bit more than 6 gallons. Imperial gallons is, I think, about 4.5 liters to the gallon. So you can do the math if you want. So I'm going to use this and modify and clean it up and change it to build myself an air tank with. So I'm going to start by taking everything off of it. Pressure switches, handles, wheels, all the rest of it, so that we're only left with the actual tank itself. So I did consider using this contactor / adjustable pressure switch, but I think we'll be just much better off if we just remove this contraption completely and use a much simpler pressure switch with a relay. So I'm going to take this thing off, if I can get it off. I'm just going to put the stopper in here to prevent any of this dirt from going into the inside of the tank. So now I'm going to cut off all the bits and pieces that I don't need, so we just left with this tank. Well, now I've also got this nice shiny tank. Too bad it's not going to stay like that for very long. Let's go and see how we can fit this thing to the frame. I stole this piece of 50mm square tubing from Dirk's metal stash, so please don't tell him. And I've just got it jammed in here for now, because my idea is to have this tank sitting somewhere here. Something to that effect. Let's check it out. So I can't have this tank sitting much lower than its current position. This green round bar is simulating my drive shaft, which I still have to find or build and find the parts. I'm currently in a fully slammed position, so that back axle is as high up as it will go. So I do have enough clearance right here. So yes, this is as low down as the tank can go in this position. So to mount it here, I can just weld on tabs like this, weld this onto the tank and then bolt it through this cross member. But if I do this, I think it will be much faster. And there he goes with his bits of plywood again. So I use my plywood template to make myself 2 steel brackets from 1/4" plate. So instead of just a tab, I want to add these as well. Weld it onto the tank there. Another one this side. Yeah, I like it. Let's see how that turns out. Well, from a strength point of view, there was certainly no need to weld all these seams fully. Just the stitches here and here and here would have been more than strong enough. But yeah, this is a habit that came from my days of building steel boats, where we always fully welded all exposed seams to prevent corrosion. So here we are. Let's go try this thing in the chassis and see how it fits. Okay, so this contraption is not gonna go right here. I'm going to bolt it through this cross member, but I didn't just drill a hole. I inserted a bit of tubing that I welded in place, so that when we tighten the bolt, there's no chance of squashing this box section, and also it will ensure that we never get any water on the inside of this box section. If I just line this hole up and stick my bolt in. So this business here is probably more than strong enough to hold this tank in place, but we don't mind a bit of over engineering. So I've got this section in the bottom here as well. I actually took out that original 50 by 50 box that I stole from Dirk, and I gave it back to him, so I'm in the clear there, and I'm using now a piece of 38 by 38 inch and a half square tubing. It will give me a little bit extra clearance as well, so I'm cool with that. And now I'm going to install these tabs here, weld them onto the tank, and then I've got extra support down here, and I can still take the tank off or out if I want. So I think I'm going to mount my shiny new compressor right here somewhere. So I'm going to make a plate that I can weld onto the tank for the compressor to sit on. Look at this, eh? Even our steel now comes from China. I mean, just about everything we buy comes from China. When I was a younger man, we made some quality steel here in South Africa. The company was called Iscor, the Iron and Steel Corporation of South Africa. Now all of that is dead. I think all our iron ore now gets exported to China. Telling you, these boys are busy taking over the world. So I found a bit of 5mm plate, and I gave it some curves and some holes to make it faster. And now my compressor will fit on here like that. I've drilled and tapped holes so I can screw it to the base plate. And with no one to hold things for me, I've made a plan here with some blocks of wood to help me hold my base plate where I want it. So now I'm going to tack it into place. That should hold it. Let's take the wood out and see what happens. Something like that. I need to weld it fully, but let's just get the compressor on here to see how it's going to work out. Yes, I think that's going to work fine. I'm going to weld it up. So let's see how we're going to plumb my repurposed air compressor tank. It's got an outlet on each side, and then up here it's got this one and this one, 4 in total. This one was blocked, so I'm going to leave it as it is. Here on the other side I'm going to screw in the safety valve that I salvaged from this tank when I got it in a junkyard. Up here we'll use this one as the inlet for the air compressor. So I'm going to connect this one here. So I'm just doing a dry run. I will add thread tape and thread sealant when I plumb this for final. And then lastly, this one will be used as my air supply line. So I've just rigged it up with some 3/8 pipe fittings. I've teed it here so I can screw in my pressure switch. And then here I've got a water trap in line just to keep the water out of the airbags and the air controller. The air line that goes to my controller will connect right here. And then that little thingy right there is the little valve to get the water out of the water trap. The pressure switch that Gremltech supplied me will switch off at 120 psi and on at 90 psi. So that should be good. And then the air line coming from the tank will connect right here on my manual air controller, and from here it will distribute to the airbags through my controls. I explained how this thing worked in my previous video about building the airbag controller. And then of course down the line this thing will be mounted inside the cab in between the two seats. Let's talk about the electrical wiring quickly. So this compressor draws 30 amps and that's too much current for my pressure switch. I'm going to have to rig up a relay. Now I can't do the final wiring yet, I still need to take things apart for painting and so on. But let's just make a quick drawing so that at least we can understand what we need to do. Let's see if we can make any sense of this drawing, and we'll start here at the compressor. So the black wire is earthed, it's connected to the chassis, and the red wire goes to the switch on the relay. If you look at the schematic diagram on any relay, you'll see the same drawing as what I have. There's the switch, there's the solenoid, and it's also marked it with numbers so that you know which wire to connect to which terminal. The other side of the switch is connected to the battery via a fuse. So it makes sense that if we close the switch on a relay, we will supply power to the compressor and it will run. The solenoid part of the relay, one side is connected to earth or the chassis, and the other side is also supplied with power from the battery via a switch. And then of course the battery is connected to the chassis and earthed as well. So if we close the switch, what happens? Power flows to the relay, the solenoid pulls the switch in, switch closes, we get power from the battery and the compressor runs. Well, there you go. I think we've got this tank business figured out. Be a while still before we can put it into operation, but we'll get there. I'll tell you, it's freaking freezing out there now. This cold front just rolled in. So I think I'm going to go and sit in front of the fire. Before I go, thanks for keeping me company out here in the forest. I enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, have a lekker one.